John Fox, and I am the lead iOS engineer at a company called Findery. We're a startup based in San Francisco, and I've been traveling and spending time in Athens for the last couple of weeks. This is my second visit. I've come here now to the Orange Grove twice to give some talks and to meet with some of the local startups, and I've been really surprised and happy to have an idea about what the scene is like here.
Can you give us a brief background about your ventures?
Sure. So I've been working on this app Findery. I joined the team almost 2 years ago. I was made an offer I couldn't refuse based on some work I did on an application called MemoryMiner. So throughout my career, I've been really interested in digital storytelling and looking at places and how they change over time and based on the people that come in and out of those places. I've written software, server-side software that's used by enterprises and sold for millions of dollars and big service contracts, and I've more recently done consumer software, which is a completely different cup of tea. It's been interesting to learn about both of that and see how some of the lessons of enterprise software have applied to consumer, but consumer is definitely a new thing for me, relatively speaking.
You are in Athens the last few days through Appsterdam organization. Can you tell us a little bit about Appsterdam and how you are here?
Sure. So, Appsterdam was started a number of years ago. I think it was more than 3 years ago by a fellow named Mike Lee, who came from San Francisco. He worked at Apple, he worked at a number of different startups there, and he decided to leave California and go travel around the world for a year for kind of what's next and where he wanted to go. And he settled on Amsterdam as a great place to live because of the different qualities of there, quality of life, openness of people, ability to do business, to be able to start up a company, and that there was quite a scene already there. So with a number of other people, we founded Appsterdam, which is this organization that's it's a meta organization for app developers by app developers. And it started in Amsterdam and it's spread to other cities through embassies, including here in Greece. And the basic idea for it is app developers helping everybody up their game. And the definition of an app developer, an app maker, can be anyone who's a software engineer or a designer or a marketeer or anybody who helps in the process of creating an actual product, which is more than just software, as you know. And so one of the main things that Appsterdam does as an organization is it helps people present their software and their idea, which is critically important. So they do things like pitch training and speaker training, so that you are working on something and you need to find partners. You need to be able to communicate very clearly and quickly what it is that you're working on and why anybody should care about that. And that's really, I think, what drew me the most into Amsterdam, is that I could go there, give a talk, get critique, get help, and have an interesting artifact afterwards in the form of a YouTube video which lives on and leads to the next speaking engagement or the next gig. And it was based on that work that I did 2 summers ago that got me some other talks in some European conferences, and also ultimately landed me here last spring, where I gave a talk about the passions of the software developer, and then more recently, a talk I gave this past Tuesday on what to do after you ship your MVP.
You are here in Orange Grove and you were working along with Greek young entrepreneurs. How do you serve this ecosystem, and what kind of advice would you give to these people?
Well, and the first thing I have to say, I'm very impressed. I'm quite surprised at how well developed it is. My understanding is that there's more than a dozen incubators. I spent time at the Cube, where I gave a brief talk for Cocoa Heads. Stone Soup is, even in the time since I first got here, their office space has become more elaborated. I see more people hanging out there and working. So I think that it definitely exceeded my expectations. Part of what I've done here for the last week is I've been meeting with a number of different companies who are housed here, and I've been very pleasantly surprised on what they're working on, and pleasantly surprised on how far along they are. I think in terms of advice or my observations, the same holds no matter where you are. If you're building an application, you're building a service, you have to earn the right to people's attention. You have to do it in pretty short increments, whether you're trying to pitch a story to a journalist to get them to write about you, or to convince somebody to download and then use your application. So that really is the case no matter where you are. There's no particular secret about that. a number of the people up here have been saying, can you give me advice on how to get tech coverage in Silicon Valley, or how to find venture funding? I think that the thing to keep in mind is that what people are doing here, what companies are building here, is very good in that you're trying to address problems that you find here, some of which, maybe not all of them, but some of them that have applications in other places. And I think that it's best to stay focused on the product and in serving your first customers, your first partners as deeply as possible. Because when you have the first reference clients, the first people who are going to say, I use this app, and to post on Facebook that they like it, or to be able to say, I've used this piece of software and it's really helped me in my engineering practice. Whatever it takes to be able to get those first people to stand up and wave the flag for your product and service, that's the case anywhere you are. So rather than trying to focus on getting the attention of something that's taking place 10,000 miles away in the San Francisco Bay Area, focus on what you're doing here. I think that marketing and promotion all starts with step 0, and that's making a good product and a good service that people want to use and will willingly say that they use and enjoy using.
And as the last comment, can you give us a little bit of picture of the ecosystem of USA or San Francisco, where you come from?
Sure. So, in San Francisco, it's very, very hot, meaning that there's a lot of activity. There's more money raised, chasing more different types of startups there, which is good and bad. It's good because there's a lot of things going on and you have a lot of ideas, and so if you're involved in the scene there at any given day, you have an endless opportunity to go to meetups, to meet and see what people are going, and any idea that you can possibly imagine probably has 3 or 4 companies consisting of 3 or 4 kids fresh out of college working away day and night to build their app, and so that's good. I think where it's different from other places is it tends to be less focused on very practical problems, partly because the nature of Silicon Valley venture funding is honestly more about gambling. You have people or funds that are going to invest in a company, pull the lever and hope that they get the next Facebook and Twitter. Whereas I think that what's the types of funding that you're seeing in Europe and other startup areas tends to be, I'm going to make a smaller investment and hopefully try to solve a particular very practical problem and not worried about the billion-dollar exit. So I think in that way it's more realistic. I think what's interesting about San Francisco now, I've lived in San Francisco since 1989, so I've been through a major earthquake and an economic bubble collapse. I've seen quite a bit with kind of bubbles inflating and bursting, is that in the end you have to hopefully work on something that you genuinely care about and let things follow from that. What keeps startups alive, what keeps people working on stuff throughout the hours of the night and on weekends and in all their available moments is that people have to deeply care about what they're building. And when that happens, you get to see some really interesting platforms and services come out. I guess one other thing is that this more recent round is definitely focused on something quite a bit more real, in terms of solving problems. When I think about apps like Lyft or Airbnb, the so-called sharing economy, that I find very interesting because they can be beautiful apps, they can create a community, but they also work towards trading on efficiency of usage of materials and capabilities. So I like that a lot. In fact, I saw some interesting startups here that are similarly modeled. So I think that's cool.
Great. Thank you very much for the talk.
Thank you.